What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we're going to take a look at Immortals of Aveum here, and a UE5 game that I wasn't necessarily expecting to run that great, and it doesn't run that great on the Steam Deck, but the fact that it boots and runs at all, hasn't crashed on me in 3 or 4 hours of testing, and is somewhat playable was surprising to me. So let's get in and take a look at this here. Now, I didn't force any compatibility layers. I did test some other ones with no difference to performance, but I wasn't having to force anything to run the game. Settings-wise, borderless windowed, 1280 by 800, no VSync turned on here, balanced for FSR. Everything else in settings here for graphics was either off or low. I did try tweaking some things up, but it really wasn't working out, so we just kept it this way. Now, I want to use this scene really quickly to look at FSR for those of you that are interested. Here's 30 FPS solid, just sitting still, mind you. Now, if we turn FSR off, we're going to go down to 20 FPS. We lose 10 FPS to sitting still here, so it shows you how much we are gaining by activating that in this game. When we go to quality, we go up to 28 FPS, so a gain of 8, 2 less than what balanced was giving us, which we'll do here, and it'll take us back to our 30, and image quality stays decent enough that way as well. Now, if we want to take a look at performance, we'll gain another 2 or 3. It does start to hit the CPU harder this way, though. It doesn't work out that great, and I did have more trouble later on. I didn't bother with ultra performance. So balance seems to be the way for me here on FSR and all the low settings. But when we get into moving from that spot, you will see the FPS go down into the 20s there. Frame time stayed decent enough, and I'm not stuttering all over the place. I haven't crashed yet in any of my testing, and it runs okay, but you are going to be at these lower frame rates with decent enough frame times. Now, that's going to depend on where you're at in the game. Now, this is interesting because this game does actually run a little better later on in certain areas than it does in the beginning. What I was somewhat impressed with is areas like this where we have like the in-game cutscene being rendered here, being rendered in-game rather than like a pre-done video, and it works pretty well. There's a ton going on here, and even with the lower settings with this kind of game, it still looks amazing. There's a lot happening, and we are still running decently here. I mean, for the most part, in the 30s. So I thought we would tank a lot more here when we got into this area. Now, as I get to move around, it's still going to do the same thing in the 20s or 30s, and since most of this game is going to be played that way, I did decide to lock it down to 30, give us a little bit of overhead that way, maybe help with some of the times that we really take hits loading in areas or whatever, and it does help mitigate things just a little bit, make it a little bit better. So for the most part, I think I'd stick with like these settings and 30 FPS cap. If you really wanted to try to push more, maybe, but I just don't think we can squeeze much more out of the game. Temps stay pretty good, and I don't have any major complaints. Now, the only reason this game stays super playable or somewhat playable when it gets down into those 20s is the frame times, as I mentioned before. The fact that they're so steady, that really helps make a difference in how a game feels, not just the frame rate, even though we would be preferring 40 to 60 FPS. And then areas like this where we're going to pop up the shield and we're fighting, even inside where we're not necessarily rendering as much of like the open world, we're still going to go down into those 20s and suffer a bit on the FPS. It's just kind of the way the game's running. For the most part, I'm running at 20 to 30 FPS. There are areas it dips more than that. But again, it's just interesting. It's both impressive that this little 4-core 8-thread that could is running the game the way that it is, but also disappointing that we can't pull our 40 FPS lock, or at least a 30 FPS lock out of the game, but it still is playable subjectively. You saw 13 FPS as I came around the corner right there. Change weapons a lot, hold my shield up, really push things here. And yeah, you'll see us come down in the FPS again, but again, frame times stay okay. We didn't crash, and I was able to chug through it. So playable is subjective, and it's up to you. But I did want to show what kind of performance we're getting here on Immortals of Aveum, and it being somewhat playable here on the deck. Both impressive and disappointing at the same time, if that makes any sense. Anyways, guys, I got a couple of minutes of like the first kind of little boss battle if you want to check out some more performance. But other than that, I'm pretty much just going to wrap it up there and leave you guys to it. As always, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.